Ladies and gentlemen, this session is sponsored by TCF Bank. Please welcome President and Chief Executive Officer of Henry Ford Health Systems, Wright Lassiter III, and Vice Chairman of the Detroit Pistons, Arn Tellem.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see this room full. Arn, it was about 4.5 years ago that we first met on this stage, and so there may be people in the audience who were here for that session. And if you were here for this session, you'll recall this conversation. If you weren't, I'll just share with you very quickly that the Chamber wanted us to spend a little bit of time talking about how we've invested together and how we've created some really interesting partnerships between the Pistons and Henry Ford Health System, and then talk maybe about other things we're doing in the community. But about 4.5 years ago, I met Arn for the first time here. I was facilitating, moderating a session on the impact of sports on race relations, and Arn was one of the speakers, panelists. And
I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah, so when he came in, I said, Arn, I've not met you yet, but I've heard a lot about you. And so, Arn, before we go on the stage, you know that everybody wants me to ask you the question. And he looks at me, kind of like he's looking at me now, and he goes, he was kind of shaking his head like, don't ask me that question. Back then, that question was, when are the Pistons going to move back to Detroit? And so I was a newcomer at that point in time to Detroit. I had been here just a few months. Arn had been here just a few weeks. And little did we know that in that conversation, we would be back here in early 2020, now having a conversation looking backwards around how the Detroit Pistons have moved themselves from Auburn Hills to Detroit, and the Chamber would want us to have a bit of a conversation around our partnership. So, Arn, I will say that there's no official moderator, so you and I are here, with our closest friends, so we could talk about anything you want. We could talk about the trade deadline, or we could talk about... No?
Nothing happening right now.
No one wanted... There was no comment about the trade deadline, so we won't talk about trade deadline. So I guess we'll stay focused on business and partnerships. So, I would just say to each of you in the audience, so Arn and I have really had the pleasure of working together since we got here in 2015, and it's a great partnership which has manifested itself in a lot of things, including the Henry Ford Detroit Pistons Performance Center, but it's also manifested itself into a great friendship.
Right.
And so, Arn, I'll just say in front of everyone, because they may not know all of this, but as we all know, we've been discussing the loss of Kobe Bryant, and Arn and Kobe had a very long-standing relationship. And so, Arn, my condolences to you as a close member of the family and a friend of Kobe's as well. So.
No, that's devastating and so tragic. My heart goes out to Vanessa and the daughters and Kobe's parents and all the survivors of the other victims in that terrible crash. It's just horrible.
Yeah. So maybe we could, Arn, just to start with, we just had Mario who suggested in his final slide that maybe the thematic representation of Detroit move from Detroit is versus everybody to Detroit restores everybody. And while Arn and I aren't here to suggest that we're touching everybody, we have had a great opportunity with the partnership that we've created adjacent to the Henry Ford Health System corporate office. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about what the Henry Ford Detroit Pistons Performance Center means to the Pistons, and then maybe I'll follow with a discussion about what that means to Henry Ford.
Well, I'll first start when I got here. The central question was whether we stay in Auburn Hills or move downtown. And it was funny, as a player agent, I had been to Auburn Hills many times, but only at night to see games. I'd never seen it during the day. So when I showed up for work in September of 2015, and I drove up to Auburn Hills for the very first time. All my meetings when I was an agent had been in Birmingham with Joe Dumars talking about player contracts at the Townsend Hotel. So I'd never really seen the Palace or its environment during sunlight. And so I drove up, and for the first time I saw it, it was just this empty parking lot, building, nothing around it. And my first impression was, well, if it's up to me, we got to move. There's no way a professional sports team in the 21st century can be out in this kind of environment. You're either in the action or out of the action. And with all the changes of young people moving back into the city, we had to be in a city. So that was my first impression. Mm-hmm. So really the first few months were really trying to figure out if there was a deal that would be possible to move the team down. But simultaneous, as I thought about it, we couldn't move downtown just to play our games. We had to have the ability to move all of our employees down and the team to practice downtown. And where would that be? So I started thinking about it, and started having meetings. And I had met Wright, as Wright alluded to. We met here in 2 weeks after I had first got on the job, and we developed a friendship. And the natural partner for a professional sports team is a medical partner. Players need health care, and it's a central thing. Fitness, training, rehab, injury prevention is all part of everything we think about as a team each day with our players. So a few months into as we were starting to begin discussions with Olympia, I reached out to Wright again. I said, I have an idea. Can we meet for breakfast? And really the vision was that if we moved downtown, I wanted to create a place, not just for our players to train, but first something bigger. For me, culture is shaped by our environment. I wanted a place we had never had a place in the Pistons' history where our business operations and basketball operations were in the same building. I wanted a place where we all could be in the same building, in the heart of downtown, where a team could practice. And that was the start of the idea. The second part of the idea was that I wanted that, having been an agent and representing players all over the country, I had seen many practice facilities, and usually they're walled off from the community. They're just private places where the team can go and practice. So the vision that I had here was, and it was really shaped in my discussions with Tom Gorse before I came here, was that we wanted to create partnerships that made a positive impact in the community and made a difference in the community, and set ourselves apart for how we contributed to Detroit's rebirth. And the idea here was that our practice facility, our performance center, was going to be open to the public. We were going to have retail. We were going to make it a place for the public and the community, whether it's businesses or civic or philanthropic organizations, could use our facility. And with Wright, I also thought maybe there was a chance that we could combine sports and medicine and have a sports medicine center a part of the facility. And so in the conversation with Wright, the key thing to this partnership was, I think, our friendship, our ability to trust each other and connect and communicate honestly, and what each side needed. But we shared a common vision, because Wright immediately saw the opportunity and the potential there for us to do something really significant for each of our organizations and also make a difference in the community. And that's how it was born. Yeah. But it takes two to make a deal, and have that shared vision, and Wright did. And to me, I can say this definitively, we wouldn't have made the move downtown if we didn't have this relationship. This is our home. This is where we spend all of our time. This is where our players basically live. They play 41 games, hopefully in the future a lot of playoff games at Little Caesars Arena. But it's really, this is our home, where we live, where they spend all their time. And it's our most important partnership. And without it, we wouldn't have been downtown.
Yeah. So, I would just say to compliment what Arn is saying is that at the same time that Arn and the Pistons were having this conversation, inside our organization, I was having a similar conversation with my team. And it was really a question, it was around a couple of things. One, I've spent my career in Dallas, Fort Worth, and in the Oakland, California area, and then now here in Detroit. And previously, I didn't have the opportunity that I thought we had with Henry Ford Health System, where I had the pleasure of leading a leading healthcare organization that had the ability to approach a sports team the way that we did with the Pistons first. Secondly, I'd never been in a place where there were 4 sports teams, and one of the questions I'd asked my team internally when I first arrived was, so oftentimes a healthcare partnership with a professional sports team becomes a proxy for your overall brand in the community. And so I began asking our team, so tell me about our relationships. And we've had a long-standing relationship with the Detroit Lions, and had a smaller relationship with the Tigers, and really no relationship with the Red Wings. And they said, and we've never had a relationship with the Pistons. And I said, well, why not? And they said, because. And I thought, oh, interesting. And so so Arn was sort of on my radar screen even before he knew it, was sort of a thought of, is there something that we could accomplish? I think then beyond, as Arn said, we're really focused on trying to find ways to deliver cutting-edge medicine in a way that is not just good for the local community, but also really good for the broader communities, for the Midwest and for the nation. And so that was important to us. And then the last thing I would say to you is this: we had a prior facility that we called our Center for Athletic Medicine. And when we created that center many years ago, it never really achieved the goals that we wanted, which was to have one of the nation's leading sports medicine facilities. And so as we began going through this partnership, it became really evident that we could not only be an important cog in supporting the move of the Pistons back into the city of Detroit, which I was all in favor of, but we could actually then, in my mind, correct something that we hadn't quite gotten correct in the past, and that was to create one of the country's leading sports medicine facilities, not just for professional athletes, but for the everyday Jane and Joe. So that was another thing that was important to us. So.
No, I got to say, for us, and you look at this year, unfortunately, we've suffered, and I'm not going to put the blame on Henry Ford. They're there to help us, but we've suffered so many injuries. Our season has really been derailed by the health of our players. But coming here as an agent, everyone thinks all we do is contracts. I spent more time as an agent on the health of my players, getting them examined, where were they going to get examined, choosing doctors, getting second opinions. We spent way more time on the health and the treatment of our players, and then also on injury prevention and getting them the proper training, than on contract negotiations. And as a professional sports team, now seeing it from the other side, it's the same thing. The health, maintenance, injury prevention, and then if something happens, the rehab of the player and how they're treated is paramount. It occupies every day. There's time spent on this. And I have to say that the doctors and the medical care we received has been phenomenal from Henry Ford Health System. The doctors have, and not only just the doctors, but just the entire support staff. It's really a wonderful partnership. One of the things that was key in our deal also was there is a bridge connecting our 2 buildings, which symbolizes our partnership. And it was very important that we have that bridge. Because it's not only a symbol of our partnership now, but to me it was a symbol of things that we could do in the future together. But one of the things that's nice about that bridge is it really, going back to the idea how the environment shapes one's culture, having ease of walking back and forth from our building to their building for our players, for our trainers, for their doctors to come over, for their rehab specialists, it just makes it much easier to have that daily contact and interaction with both sides. And that's really been a real positive for both of us.
Arn, maybe you could just talk a little bit. You mentioned that within the Pistons Performance Center complex, there are other partners in the building, and so maybe you should talk a little bit about what else is in the building, because there may be people in the audience that haven't had a chance yet to come by or drive by and see it. So what else is there, and what else is coming
Right.
on your side of the facility?
Well, I think when we formulated the idea that we were going to do this in our partnership, we wanted to have some other tenants in the building, and the first key partner was Plum Market, who is now opened, and it's been really a welcome addition, not only for our team and for Henry Ford, but for the community, because there really aren't any grocery stores, very few restaurants in our area, New Center. There's many coming, but this really is, I think, a real positive. And for us, even on that deal, the key element, because I had talked to a number of food providers as I was looking at the options, and the reason we settled on Plum was, I said there was a number that everyone wanted to cater for the team, because in the back of the performance center, there's a private place where the players just eat, and everyone wanted to provide that service. And I said, no, the only way you can do that is if you open a public restaurant that's going to serve the community. And Plum readily accepted that idea, and that was a key component of our deal with them. And I wanted also a high level. I wanted a high-end food provider for our players and for the community, someone that symbolizes excellence and good health and nutrition, which probably goes along with sports medicine as the second most important component of what the players need. So Plum was the perfect fit, and they've opened what's amazing is, because I thought in the beginning it would just be serving us, our employees, our team, but it's been a huge positive in the community. Many of the people from Henry Ford come over, but also for the people who live there and work, within the close proximity, they've been coming over to enjoy Plum. So that was the first one. The second thing was, what else does the community need? We stand for fitness. So we made a deal with a gym that's going to serve the community, that's going to open later this summer. And then we put into place, we had other space that we built for the community, and now we haven't announced it yet, but a foundation that serves this community, that's a very prominent foundation, will be taking space, and they'll probably be coming later this spring into the building as well. So those are some of our key partners. The other component that we added to the building, just to make it more attractive, is we have great entertainment space for our team, but also it's really for the community to use. And we've now had over 100 requests from civic and organizations and companies in Detroit to use it for entertaining, for events for their employees, but also events for young people. We had an event going on today for several hundred young people with some of the tech companies in the area that were providing them fitness and also training and technology. So these are the wonderful ways that we can use this facility that's going to serve not only our team and Henry Ford, but also the community as well.
Let me just add a couple of points. So I want to make sure that I don't, this doesn't turn into an unabashed advertising for Henry Ford. But if you don't have a Henry Ford physician, we can help you with that out in the lobby when we finish. So, I'm kidding. But I would just say that a couple things. So in the same way that the Pistons want their side of the complex to be open to the community, we're trying to do the same thing with the medical side of the facility. And so it is, when we talk about partnerships, this is a sort of multi-layered partnership. The sports medicine facility that's attached is called the William Clay Ford Center for Athletic Medicine. You might say, the what? William Clay Ford. Well, he wasn't about basketball. Our prior Center for Athletic Medicine, Midtown, was named after Mr. Ford. And when Arn and I came to the agreement, I came in one day and I said, hey, Arn, by the way, I'm going to name our facility after William Clay Ford if I can get Mrs. Ford to agree. Do you have a problem with that? And he looked at me, and I told him the why, and he had no concern. And so I was really happy that we could not only bridge healthcare and an NBA organization, but also co-brand with a football owner as well. But I would tell you that our facility is also open to the public. That Center for Athletic Medicine is there to serve the Pistons' needs, certainly, but we have partnerships with 8 colleges and universities that we serve the needs of their athletes. We have relationships with 20 high schools around Southeast Michigan where we serve the needs of their high school athletes. And to Arn's point, because Arn in his past life had represented high-level players nationally, one of the things he said to us was, I really want to make sure that we have some of the best technology in the country and or in the world. And so if you are an athlete, or if you are a weekend warrior, or if you have kids that are in that space, we have some technology there that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. We have a semi technology that's all about evaluating motion. And in about 2 months, our staff are going to take me through that. So hopefully I won't end up needing any other medical services. But it is the only technology that exists in this kind of facility in the country. And so we're really very focused on trying to ensure that professional athletes or the weekend athlete continues to perform at their best. Arn, we've got about 8 minutes left, and
Okay.
so you mentioned fitness, and so the crowd may not know that we have something called Pistons Fit, a collaborative program that the Pistons and Henry Ford do together. That's really focused on health education, health and wellness education in the school system. As I looked out my window, I could look out my window and see the facility, and so it's good for lots of reasons. I used to call Arn from time to time when the building was being built early on, and I'd say, hey Arn, I'm looking out my window and I don't see any work going over there. Who's paying for the construction workers today, you or me? If it's you, okay, fine. If it's me, I got to get them working. But now I can also see what activities they have going on, and so as he mentioned, I saw several school buses of kids today coming over. But our Pistons Fit program is very focused on ensuring that we can spread health and wellness for students in Detroit public schools on a regular basis. Would also say that this year we're heavily focused on mental health, and so we have an initiative around ensuring that middle and high school students have access to appropriate mental health in the public school system as well. And so we're doing those kinds of things to try to ensure that we don't just focus on sports and we don't just focus on winning and healthcare, but we focus on trying to uplift the community as well. Arn, are there any other things you'd like to talk about related to other investments that the Pistons are focusing on in the community?
Well, I think the main one right now, if I was going to highlight one activity that we're proud of that was part of our deal to come downtown, was in our discussions with the mayor when we were asking what could we do to highlight our involvement in the community, was he was very concerned about that the recovery of Detroit reached the neighborhoods, and he mentioned the revitalization of all the city parks. So we committed to rehabbing 60 basketball courts in all the neighborhoods in the parks to try to bring some life to these great parks, historic parks. And I think one of the things that was interesting about, again, talking about partnerships and how bringing people together, different entities together, to work together, you can achieve much more. So we started these courses. And I said I was concerned. Well, one about their maintenance, keeping them up, and the community really embracing and using them. And I said, basketball now is played primarily indoors, and when you look at the weather here, also, it's primarily played indoors. But the mayor really convinced me that the outdoor courts were necessary, so we went along with it. But now that we're doing it, and we've rehabbed now 23 or 24 of the courts, we're going to do 60 over our first 5 years downtown. I said, well, I don't want these courts to sit empty. So now we're going further than what the mayor asked. We started last year just to try it, to see if it could work. We started programming 2 of the courts that we had rehabbed in the summer with yoga, basketball clinics, and activity throughout the week, and it was successful. So now we're doing an RFP, and we're bringing in an outside firm to help us to go out to the communities. And this year we're going to probably go to 6 courts to see how we could program them and make it better for the community and get the communities involved in what do they want, what do they need. So we're now going to take it to 6, and we've got a couple foundations now, the Wilson Foundation and the Davidson Foundation, that are going to help support this in partnership with us. So our goal is to grow this considerably and ultimately have all 60 courts programmed when they're finished, and really to provide activity that the community wants throughout the summer, not just basketball. It could be a variety of activities. So it's really to bring life to these parks, have the community take ownership of them, and to really bring them back to life, which will hopefully really reinvigorate life in these neighborhoods and be a key gathering place for people. So that's something that we're proud of and that we're really embracing and going above and beyond what the mayor asked us to do with our move downtown. The second thing I want to say is the interesting thing, I think, that our partnership in News Center has a lot of potential beyond what we just, I invite everyone here to come out and see our building. But I believe there is a lot more potential to grow our partnership. And my hope is that, and create really a campus feel. We're already starting to feel it there, but I think my hope is that together we can really create, when I was an agent, I remember going to see Nike in Beaverton, Oregon, and the campus they created. And if we can somehow find a way to duplicate that between the two of us, I think we really can bring much more life to this community and really and be a catalyst for real growth in the News Center area together.
Yeah. Well, I would just add to that, Arn. So, for folks who are thinking about Henry Ford Health System and the kind of investments we're making in Midtown, later this summer, around July of this year, we will open up what is about $155 million investment in cancer care, with what we believe will be one of the nation's leading cancer both research and care facilities on Grand Boulevard. So that will open in middle of July of this year. We continue to work around redevelopment of much we consider south of Grand Boulevard. Last year, we rehabbed a vacant building and created what we're calling Art Block, which is a community art installation to try to invest in neighborhood art and in culture in that community. We're looking at really mundane things that people don't necessarily like to hear about, like shared laundry facilities, partnering with other health systems to bring jobs into Midtown. But I would tell you that I would agree with Arn that while we're not prepared to make any announcements today, but you should just keep focusing on our Midtown area, because I am committed to trying to create a fairly significant redevelopment of the area in and around where our corporate headquarters is located and where Henry Ford Hospital is on Grand Boulevard. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to enhance that community, not only with retail, potentially with mixed-use developments. That area needs additional housing. That area needs hotels. There are lots of things that are needed there, and I would say that our performance center is frankly the foundation of, I think, what will be a long-lasting and pretty interesting partnership over the coming years. So maybe this time next year we'll come back and share
We'll do
an
a reunion
announcement.
tour
Absolutely.
every few years here.
All right, Arn, anything else you want to talk about? I think our time is just about up. We're good?
Go Pistons.
Go Pistons. All right, thanks very much.